Welcome back to Fantasy Football by Committee, powered by Flurry Sports. It can be tough to win a fantasy league on your own, but at FFBC, we will work together to bring home the hardware. Hosted by Zach Bruner and the rest of the Flurry Sports crew, we will give top-level analysis, answer your questions, and, well, go off on other tangents.
That was after I tried to get ChatGPT to admit that 9/11 was an inside job, but it stood firm. It gave quite a few solid points that it was true.
Welcome to Fantasy Football by Committee. The show starts in 3, 2, 1.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Fantasy Football by Committee. Welcome back to Flurry Sports. And happy Halloween, happy NFL trade deadline day. We've had a couple of trades, nothing, overly noteworthy, especially for fantasy football. The Bears traded for a second-round pick for a player on an expiring contract. Obviously, fifth-round option going to be picked up, but feels like 2 second-round pick trades in a row for the Bears. That doesn't seem overly great. Obviously, we remember they traded what ended up being the 33 overall pick for Chase Claypool. And Chase Claypool obviously no longer on the team. So little interesting trade for Chicago. I'm not sure why they, of all teams, are buyers at the NFL trade deadline, but that is fine. I suppose I respect it. I assume they're going to get burnt, but whatever. We will react live to any trade deadline news. If you in the chat see some trade deadline news, definitely drop it in the chat. You can also drop your fantasy football questions as well. We'll be going over, like we do at the beginning of every week, go over some of the trending players on Sleeper Fantasy. That is the most picked up players in the past 24 hours. We will also go over some of the best waiver wire pickups for the week. And obviously, we have bye week starting back up again this week. But overall, it's not really, in my opinion, a waiver wire week where there's a million amazing people to pick up. There's even really a clear top player to pick up. I don't think really that's the case. I don't think there's anyone you need to go out and spend a shit ton of your fab on. But obviously, the quarterback position specifically has been hit pretty hard, and there's some quarterbacks available this week as well. The 4 bye weeks are the Broncos, the Lions, the Niners, and the Jaguars. So there are people relying on those quarterbacks for fantasy football. Trevor Lawrence, obviously, Jared Goff, obviously, and Brock Purdy. There's some people relying on him. And 2 quarterback leagues, especially Russell Wilson's been relevant. You'll be without him. There's injuries. Obviously, there's Stafford, possibly Pickett. Kirk Cousins is done for the year. He's been fantasy relevant. We'll be going over a bunch of that stuff, but Ralph dropped a question in the chat. And again, everyone else watching, even if you're watching now, after the fact, whatever, drop your fantasy football questions and we will go over them. So Ralph wants to know, with the Kirk Cousins injury, I'm trying to trade Justin Jefferson. Smart. For anyone, but no one is biting. I'm 6-2, but it's looking bad down the line. This is what I'll say. I do think it's smart to trade Justin Jefferson if you can. I am in a league that I am currently trading him most likely to a Vikings fan, so easier to do so when there's such a built-in fandom and love for him already. But I'm not selling low on Justin Jefferson, and this is why. Let me bring up the Vikings schedule. Justin Jefferson out at least 2 more weeks, I believe. I believe that's the timeline. Possibly more. But Vikings won 4 of their past 5 games. They're back up to 500, and their schedule is the Falcons, the Saints, the Broncos, the Bears, the Raiders. Obviously, super winnable games in there. And I say that because even without Kirk Cousins, I think the Vikings are going to remain relevant. They're going to remain on that bubble, especially given the bottom portion of the NFC. So I think that, it's going to create pressure on Justin Jefferson to come back regardless. Now, the step down at quarterback, it kind of depends on who they go with, I think. Hall came in. He was the quarterback 2. Mullins was the emergency quarterback last week. So Hall, the rookie from BYU, came in. I admittedly don't know a ton about him. Actually, after this, and I did a little bit this morning just trying to learn more about him specifically because I would assume the Vikings go with him. Maybe they don't, but I think they should. And what I'm finding right now, like, I don't think he's outstanding by any stretch of the imagination, but I think he can throw it. I think he is more than capable of getting the ball to these receivers. And he's a little bit more mobile for sure than Kirk Cousins, but he's kind of mobile, which I think is going to be good behind this offensive line, especially. And if he can extend some plays, these receivers, including Hawkinson, including the receiving backs there, like, they're good enough to get open. They're good enough to beat man coverage. They're good enough to find the open spot in the defense. And I think Hall could actually have some success. He's not a guy I'm seeking for fantasy football to pick him up specifically, but I think Justin Jefferson's still going to be pretty good when he comes back. And I think he does come back. So I think he'll be pretty good. Will he be the same Justin Jefferson value as before? I think that's highly unlikely, but I think he can still be a low-end wide receiver 1. So I'm not trading him for anything less than that. What helps you is, or could be, hopefully this isn't your trade deadline as well, right? Hopefully you have at least another week or two to play with. If Hall plays this week, he plays the Falcons. The Falcons aren't great. The Falcons just got torched by Will Levis. If Hall can have success against the Falcons, all of a sudden Justin Jefferson's value skyrockets again, right? One less week of waiting for him to come back. The quarterback looks competent enough. So I think, again, don't sell low on Justin Jefferson. I think there's a chance his value actually can bump back up after this week. Depends on how, the Vikings play against the Falcons. The reverse could happen if they have a Raiders-like passing game tonight. Won't be good. Caden, couple questions from you here. Let's jump to it. Was just offered Kupp and Laporta for A.J. Brown. That's a super interesting trade. Assuming your tight end isn't great, I don't hate it. Obviously, I said it in the summer. I said it at the start of the season. I said it when he was ranked tight end 1. Multiple times we've been covering this, I have at least, that Sam Laporta was one of my favorite sell high candidates of the entire fantasy football season. It was going to be extremely predictable. And I think it's come to fruition. I think he's going to hit this rookie wall. I don't think it's even hit yet. But I think he's still going to be one of the better tight ends in fantasy. So I think Kupp gets better, probably. Without Stafford, that hurts a little bit. It really depends. If your tight end is absolute dog trash, then I think I would consider it. Otherwise, A.J. Brown's good. A.J. Brown's really good. So sell high on Sam Howell or write it out. Sam Howell, again, one of the most predictable fantasy football players this year. He was included in my quarterback streamers article last week. And surprise, surprise, he goes crazy. And it's because, the Washington Commanders ideally would like to run the ball, pass it when need be, right? And your quarterback's Logan Thomas. So I do think I would probably entertain that trade. If he offered it to you, though, Caden, that means he's willing to give up a little bit more. So squeeze him a little bit, see if you can get more, get as much as you can. But if for some reason they don't budge for any more, I think I would take it. But I'm confident you could get more if they're the ones who offered it to you. But Sam Howell, like, whenever Washington gets down, the Commanders have to throw it, right? Like, game script, you have to pass it to get back into the game. Sam Howell's been one of the best quarterbacks this year, and that's not an exaggeration. I think he has a top 5 arm talent in the NFL. He can make any throw. He's extremely talented. His receivers are actually pretty good. Just mentally, right? He doesn't make the best decisions, and mentally, he's not an elite quarterback. But I think arm talent, he's got it. I think he's good. And last week, obviously, they found a way to keep him upright against Philadelphia, which was huge for him. With that being said, I will say he's been included as like the top fantasy football pickup by a lot of people this week because everyone's overreacting to last week. And, I've included him in many, many, many streamers articles this year for good reason. But next week he plays the Patriots. So here's the thing. I think Sam Howell needs to be owned. I think he's going to be fantasy relevant the rest of the year. I don't like him next week against the Patriots. But after that, he has Seattle. He has the Giants. He has the Cowboys, who I think he can beat. He has the Dolphins. These are all teams that are capable of putting up points against Washington and have defenses that can get beat by Sam Howell. So sell high. If you can sell very high, then I would love it. Yeah, he's quarterback 7. I've been screaming his name all year. Like, you can go on flurrysports.org and just find every time I've written about him, which has been essentially every week. And I think he's going to be good rest of the season. Rest of the season, he might be a top 10 quarterback. I just don't like him this week. I really just don't like him this week. So sell high, yes, if you can. But he's not a must sell at all. There's going to be a lot of people, this is a waiver wire show. There's going to be a lot of people paying to pick up Sam Howell, playing him against the Patriots. I think he's going to have a poor performance. And if he does, those people are going to drop Sam Howell. And then I think you can pick him up and, have a really nice stretch there for him. Unfortunately, what it looks like, fantasy football playoffs, week 16 is the Jets. Week 17 is the 49ers. That's tough. So if you are rocking with Sam Howell as your quarterback 1, there's a chance you might want to look ahead. And if you think you're going to be in the championship, you may want to have a contingency plan for those weeks. Should contending teams be allowed to trade with a 1-7 team in redraft? That's interesting. At this point in the season, right? So we're going into week 9. So there's maybe 4 weeks left, maybe? Until playoffs? 5 weeks? Probably 5 weeks left until playoffs. So as long as the 1-7 team is mathematically still in it, I think it should be allowed. Because, hey, they could make a big move, take a big risk, and it pays off and they win out and they make the playoffs. I don't want to take that away from them, right? I think it's unfair to take that away from them. I think you need to use a judgment. It's a judgment call. If it just looks like they are giving up on the season and they're folding just to help out their friend or to help out the top team, maybe that top team cuts them in on the prize pool, right? We've heard of that happening. If that's what it seems like, obviously shut that down. But if it's them just taking a big risk, taking a big swing, if they can justify it, they're just trying to do anything to possibly have something big pay off for them and they can win out, then I think you got to allow it. Fantasy football is supposed to be fun. Don't take away their fun. But yeah, any other questions, drop it in chat. If there's anything trade deadline related, I'm just refreshing some of it now. Definitely drop in a chat so we can talk about it. Obviously, Montez Sweat traded. We talked about that. Somehow the Commanders are also shopping Chase Young. That's weird. Devontae Adams not expected to get moved at all. That's fucking scummy, and that sucks for him. But whatever. Let's talk about the top trending players on Sleeper Fantasy. Again, these are the top most picked up players over the past 24 hours. Number 1 with over 700,000 pickups, rostered in 7% of leagues. Obviously, most leagues, I would say, have their waivers processing tonight, so he'll get picked up more. That's Will Levis. Will Levis came in for Tennessee this week, and people, Will Levis realized, hey, maybe it's a good idea to just throw it up for DeAndre Hopkins. Maybe that's a good plan. He did that. He had success. 238 yards passing isn't crazy. 4 touchdowns is good, obviously. DeAndre Hopkins catching 3 of them is a big deal. I don't think you need to go crazy with Will Levis. I think there's a decent chance he's the quarterback rest of season. right? He plays Thursday, which sucks. So after, he has a high, he gets to play against the Falcons. He plays well, yada, yada, plays decent. I think people are overblowing it a little bit, but he played pretty decent. Now, short week, short turnaround, and he has to face TJ Watt. I think the secondary can get got, but that Tennessee offensive line is dog shit, and Pittsburgh's going to be bringing a ton of pressure. So I think he might look terrible Thursday. And at that point, does Vrabel just go back to Tannehill? That's going to be the question. That's going to be the question. Regardless, I'm not spending top dollar on Will Levis. I don't think there's any reason to do that. Randy, Justin Jefferson is no longer a trade target since Kirk went down, right? Disagree. Everything's relative. We just talked about trading away Justin Jefferson if you can, but I mean, the opposite's true. If someone's selling low, they're thinking, oh, Kirk Cousins is down, Justin Jefferson's going to be nothing. He may not even come back. If someone's thinking that and you can pay wide receiver 2 value for Justin Jefferson, then I'm doing it. Like, I'm not trading for Justin Jefferson just to trade for Justin Jefferson, but if you can buy low, got to do it. I just went over their schedule. Their schedule is so easy. It's so easy for the next 6 weeks. And I think Jaron Hall, that's got to be wrong. Something Hall. He can throw it. He's a little more mobile than Kirk, which I think is good. And I think he can make some plays, especially against the defenses coming up. So I think, Justin Jefferson's going to be fantasy relevant. I think he comes back, and I think he's going to play well. I just don't think he's going to be a top 3 wide receiver. I think he's going to be a low-end wide receiver 1. Thoughts on Madison now? Should we hold? I think the only person you could sell Madison for any type of value for, or 2, would be the Cam Akers owners. Like, I don't think you can get Jerkcox, by the way, jumping ahead, definitely taking fantasy football questions, so ask away. But I think the only person you can get a respectable value for Madison with is the Cam Akers owners. So I'm not selling them just to sell them. I think if you can get something respectable, maybe flex value in return, I think do it. But I think it's going to be a hot hand approach offense. I don't think last week was an indication of Cam Akers overtaking Madison. I think it's going to be game by game, which possibly is even worse, from a fantasy football perspective than actually getting overtaken, just because it's unpredictable. And if you can't predict it, then it's going to be tough to ever start them. And if you can't start them, why are you even holding on to them? So I get it. I would put some feelers out there to the Cam Akers owner and just say, hey, you can lock down this backfield. Kirk Cousins just went down. They're going to be so run heavy. I don't think that's true, but they're going to be run heavy. He's going to skyrocket in value. That's what I would do. I would sell the fact of locking down a backfield and see what you can get. But he's not a must sell, but he's not a must hold either. You know what I mean? I'm 7-1 full PPR. Congrats to you. I got offered Breece Hall and Olave for Kamara and Gabe Davis. Seems like an easy trade for me to accept, but I'm skeptical and I don't know why. My running backs would be Jacobs, Hall. Wide receivers would be Hill and Olave. Yeah, I think you should do that. I'm not the biggest Olave fan. I never have been, but I'm certainly not a huge Kamara fan. I think his touchdown upside is very low. I would obviously rather have Breece Hall than Kamara. And then if you're comparing Olave and Gabe Davis, Gabe Davis is just not predictable at all. Not that Olave is, but I think there's a chance Olave and Derek Carr start to connect on those deep targets a little bit more. That's kind of what's been missing. So yeah, I would do that trade. Seems too easy, right? But yeah, I would do that for sure. Other trending players on Sleeper Fantasy. We got Leonard Fournette as the number 2 most picked up player. The dump truck goes to Buffalo. The Bills sign, after looking like shit, the offense for the Buffalo Bills, kind of, for the past month, I would say, they made the decision to sign Leonard Fournette. I don't know why. Like, I don't think this is a fix for anything. I don't understand why this move was made. They don't want to commit to James Cook, it feels like. What I will say, like, I don't think you need to go pick up Leonard Fournette. If you're in a 16-team league, obviously, you know, he's a player who's had success, pick him up or whatever. I think this says more. Like, I just think he overtakes the Latavius Murray role at some point. That's all it feels like to me. I don't know why the Bills would actively give Leonard Fournette, like, the touches between the 20s that James Cook has been seeing. James Cook hasn't been getting the goal line touches anyways, you know, for his career, whatever. So I think that could be Leonard Fournette's gig. Maybe he's a goal line guy. Maybe he's a short yardage guy. He can catch the football, obviously. But yeah, he's not a must pickup. Like, he's the second most trending player, and that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. There's no point to do that. There's no point to do that. I don't get it. But yeah, if you are someone who's been rocking with Latavius Murray, and unfortunately there are a lot of people who have had to do that, if that's the case, you know, you're going to have to come up with a different plan than Latavius Murray, I think. And I don't know if Leonard Fournette's going to be the answer there, but that's the kind of value I think he's going to settle into towards the end of the year. And if that is good enough value for you, what we've seen from Latavius Murray, then cool. But when you have to put in your fab bids for waivers or whatever, keep that in mind. That's the, I feel like, ceiling of what you're paying for. Number 3, hey, Jaren Hall is the quarterback's name for the Vikings. I don't know why that felt super wrong, but he's number 4. Number 3 most trending player on Sleeper Fantasy is Trey McBride, second year tight end for the Arizona Cardinals, someone who I've loved, talked up a bunch. And unfortunately, he has just been stuck behind Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz is still a legit tight end, but he gets put on IR. Trey McBride gets thrown into a full-time role essentially this past week, but I was pumping the brakes notably. I just didn't like the matchup against the Ravens. I didn't think Josh Dobbs would play very well. Turns out Josh Dobbs didn't play very well, but the surprising part was that just did not matter. Trey McBride, 14 targets, 10 catches, 95 yards, touchdown, 82% of the snaps, most notably. He's extremely athletic. He's extremely good. People forget he was a second-round tight end pick last year, or second-round draft pick at tight end last year for the Cardinals, and like, he's going to be one of their best receiving weapons, if not their best. I think he's that talented. I think he's good. The issue now is, I think he should get picked up, by the way. He plays the Browns this week. And again, I don't love the matchup with the Browns. He switches quarterbacks now. It sounds like Clayton Tune's going to be the quarterback. And then he's going to switch quarterbacks again, probably in week 10 when Kyler Murray comes back. But this is a guy who absolutely should be owned. I think you should go pick him up if you have any struggles at tight end. I just don't think he's a must start this week. And if he performs poorly this week, do not hit the panic button, because then he has the Falcons, the Texans, the Rams, the Steelers, then a bye week. So I think he has top 10 upside rest of the way. It'll be interesting to see what they do when Zach Ertz comes back. Because when Zach Ertz comes back, assuming he can come back, which it seems relatively safe that he can, I just think you have to play Zach Ertz. So are we going to see a lot more 2 tight end sets? That makes sense. So we'll see. But I like Trey McBride a lot. So if you have any questions at tight end whatsoever, I think you can go pick him up. And I think you can go pick Jake Ferguson up if he is still out there for you. Let's see. Trey McBride right now owned in 28% of Sleeper Fantasy leagues. Jake Ferguson owned in 55% of Sleeper Fantasy leagues. Obviously, I'm a Wisconsin fan, maybe a little bit biased there, but Jake Ferguson, super well-rounded tight end. He can do absolutely everything well, which is exactly what the Dallas Cowboys look for in their tight ends. My only worry was they were kind of using a tight end by committee approach still. They were playing Schoonmaker a little bit. Hendershot had a little bit of a role. But it has been back-to-back weeks now for Jake Ferguson with 80% or more of the snaps. First time we've seen that. So assuming that continues, I like Jake Ferguson as a tight end target, and I think you can pick him up with the hope of that continuing. Obviously, 80% of the snaps last week, 47 yards and a touchdown, had a sweet catch in the back of the end zone. So I think you can pick him up with the hope of trust. Sounds like I'm not, fully buying into it, but at the tight end position, you're just hoping for opportunity. 80 plus % of the snaps back-to-back weeks. That is opportunity. Let's place a little bit of our trust that we can do that. Speaking of trust, Ralph, are we trusting Taysom Hill? I'm guessing. Saints, Taysom Hill moving forward? No, if that's who you're asking about. Absolutely not. I kind of went on a weird, I don't think I went on a full rant, but Wednesday nights we do the ranking show. Taysom Hill was ranked as the tight end 12 or 13 amongst the consensus this past week, and I just thought it was ridiculous. Like, everyone was talking up, okay, you're good, Ralph. So yes, Taysom Hill. Everyone was talking up Taysom Hill as this great tight end target to start, to pick up, to whatever, because he's been getting all these targets at tight end, because he was getting all these catches. And I just said it was fucking ridiculous. That's so stupid to say. Juwan Johnson comes back. So he's going to take some of the tight end snaps away. And the only thing we know about Taysom Hill's career is that it's inconsistent. He gets moved around everywhere. His snaps are super inconsistent. No reason to trust it. I was right in that he wasn't really used at tight end, and he didn't do much receiving the ball. However, all the people who ranked him high got fucking bailed out because he had a rushing touchdown. So I don't think you can trust it. If you have him and you can sell him to someone who's in need of a tight end, I would do that. But he's going to have more big weeks. He absolutely is going to have more big weeks. I just don't think you can predict it. I don't think there's any chance you can predict it. He's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games this year with one target. And that includes last week when everyone was saying he was a consensus tight end 1. He got 22 points because of bullshit. That is for sure not predictable. So no, not predictable moving forward. If you can sell high on Taysom Hill and sell him as someone who can be trusted, I would do it in a heartbeat. Dylan has a full PPR question. Would you give up Stephon Diggs for Pacheco and Garrett Wilson? Considering his depth, he's got CMC, Ford, Roschon, DeMarcado, Singletary, Herbert. And then at receiver, he's got Diggs, Ayuk, Waddle, Flowers. Pacheco has a nice schedule. Wilson on the rise, ? I understand you need a running back, but I think you can get more for Diggs. I'm not a guy who's sold on Pacheco, so maybe that's the holdup. I think you can get more. I think you can get a better running back. And Garrett Wilson, I think, is respectable the rest of the way. But given, let's say you have Ayuk, Waddle, Flowers, and Garrett Wilson, I don't think he's a must start every week. And I think you're going to be playing a lot of weird question games when you're like, who do I start out of this group? So I would prefer to get a more legit running back and a worse receiver given your team and that trade. I'm not giving up Diggs for the hope that Isaiah Pacheco falls in the end zone is kind of what it is. I'm not doing that. Let's refresh some trade deadline news here again. Anyone who has trade deadline, sees any trade deadline news, definitely send it over. Doesn't seem like anything's happening. Typical NFL trade deadline, I suppose. But yeah, let's quickly cruise through some of these other trending players. There's a couple I definitely want to talk about. But number 4 most picked up player, 300,000 pickups. We got Jaron Hall, the rookie from Minnesota. The Vikings haven't committed to which quarterback they want to use, Jaron Hall or Nick Mullins. It sounds like the decision is between those two. Kirk Cousins out for the year with a torn Achilles. I don't know why they would go to Nick Mullins unless they just feel like he is less risky, I suppose. I think Jaren Hall is fine. I don't think he's a good quarterback necessarily, but he's a little more mobile. He can make some plays behind this inconsistent Vikings offensive line, I would call it. And I think he's capable of making the throws. He's capable of making the throws to the players, the good receivers on the team. Obviously, you got Hawkinson, you got Addison, you got KJ Osborne. Soon, Justin Jefferson coming back. We'll see if the Vikings do anything different, but Hall isn't the guy I'm going to out of my way to pick him up. I don't think there's a chance he's a top 10 quarterback or a top 12 quarterback. And if that's the case, then like we don't really need to be paying for a quarterback free agent, right? We got Will Levis out there. I think I'd prefer Will Levis to, that's interesting. Maybe I don't. Will Levis or Jaren Hall? I just talked about how Will Levis's matchup Thursday scares me. Vikings schedule for the next 6 weeks or so is fucking patty cake. I don't know. That's a really tough one. And just to share my thought, is just like, do I trust the Titans stick with Will Levis past Thursday if he plays poorly on Thursday? And I don't have that trust. I don't think that's a given for many reasons, not just because they think Tannehill's better, which I think he is better, but like, this Titans offensive line's terrible. Why would you put your rookie back there just to get hit over and over and over again and potentially ruin his future like we've seen with so many young quarterbacks? I don't know why the Titans would do that. So maybe I would prefer to pick up Jaren Hall just on a hope and a prayer that he's fantasy relevant. I'd prefer Sam Howell, obviously. It looks like Derek Carr is the 8th most picked up player of the week. I'd prefer Derek Carr to the two rookies for sure. But yeah. We got some defenses mixed in. Taysom Hill is the 6th most picked up player. You know my thoughts on him. Demario Douglas, another rookie wide receiver for the Patriots. Demario Douglas, the 7th most picked up player. The Patriots finally had a wide receiver we can trust for fantasy football in Kendrick Bourne. Kendrick Bourne tears his ACL, I believe, out for the season. That sucks. Rookie Demario Douglas is looking like the next best target there for the Patriots. He had 7 targets last week, if I'm correct. Yes. Played 77% of the snaps, 7 targets last week. With Kendrick Bourne, he played 62% of the snaps, 6 targets. So going forward, he's got Washington. He has the Colts, a bye week, then the Giants, the Chargers, the Steelers. Certainly winnable matchups for Demario Douglas. I think he is going to be seeing some targets. And if you were thin at wide receiver, I think you can pick him up and he could emerge as a wide receiver 4, potentially a wide receiver 3 for you. So I do think Demario Douglas should be included in your fantasy football pickups. I think he's pretty good. And I would assume virtually unowned. 7% ownership in Sleeper, which means even less on other platforms. Another guy who has dropped a bunch. I would prefer to pick up Demario Douglas to this person, I believe. But Jahan Dotson, who I think is a stud. I think he's good. I think he's a good player. He had a huge game last week, 108 yards and a touchdown. But nothing was really different, like in terms of like playing time. He had a few more targets than normal, but whatever. I think it's going to be more of the same. Maybe this breaks the seal and all of a sudden Jahan Dotson gets targeted more and is playing better. But last week, at least so far, is looking like the outlier. And I don't think there's there isn't much reason to trust that he turns that around. So I don't think Jahan Dotson is a must pick up by any stretch of the imagination. Check if Dalton Kincaid's still out there, I suppose. He's owned in 73% of 73% of sleeper fantasy leagues. Rightfully so. He should be 100% owned while Dawson Knox is out. Any other player I wrote down to talk about? Ooh, Taylor Heineke. So again, quarterback issues. We got Kirk Cousins hurt. We got Ritter benched. We got Stafford hurt. We got Pickett hurt, possibly not playing. Cousins. We got a lot of shit happening. Desmond Ritter benched. Taylor Heineke comes in. I mean, if I'm the Falcons, I would stick with Heineke. Heineke is certainly a better player. He's more aggressive, which is all we're really shooting for here. Sleeper's taking forever to load. There we go. No, it's still taking forever. Heineke owned in 3% of leagues. Wasn't great last week, obviously, but better than Ritter. He's worth the pickup just because the weapons are there. The offensive line is there. I think the offense is solid in place. I think the matchups are looking okay. At least the next 2 weeks. Then he has a bye week. Then he has the Saints and the Jets. That could get a little tough. But I think Heineke could end up being one of those quarterback pickups that really, he's kind of the bridge quarterback pickup, maybe helps you get to the next thing for you. But I think he can keep your fantasy team afloat. So again, I think we got to figure out what the Ritter situation is going to be. Assuming the Falcons commit to Heineke, I would prefer Heineke to Levis. I would prefer Heineke to the Vikings quarterback. I would prefer Sam Howell to Heineke. I would prefer Derek Carr to Heineke, I think. Yeah. If you guys got any questions about fantasy quarterbacks, definitely drop them in. Darrell Henderson is another guy people weren't really trusting for some reason, and it's not like he had a great game, but he's certainly going to be used. He's owned in 57% of sleeper fantasy leagues, played 47% of the snaps this past week, 3 catches, 12 carries, so 15 total touches after last week's 20 touches. We still have a couple games without Kyren Williams, and those games are against the Packers this week. Great matchup. He's got a bye. Does Kyren Williams come back the week after that? There's a chance he might, actually. But still, Darrell Henderson, I think, is a guy you can pick up and start this week. And that's pretty damn valuable, especially with bye weeks. So, in terms of running backs, he's probably the top pickup, I would say. Zach Charbonnet is seeing his... Obviously, he's healthier now, but he's seeing his role grow a little bit. He played how many snaps last week? 59% of the snaps, 5 carries, 2 targets. I think there's a chance his role grows. He outsnapped Walker. I don't think that's legit. I don't think we can expect that going forward. But I think he possibly could grow into the role that we sort of projected him preseason. Like, he could be that short yardage guy. He could be the hammer, the thunder to Walker's lightning. I think he could grow into that. So I think Charbonnet should be, looked at in your fantasy league because of that. Dobbs, the Vikings. That's the trade that just happened. That's stupid. Okay, so, I just want to see what the compensation was. It's got to be like a 6th, right? Josh Dobbs gives the Vikings quarterback with Jaron Hall not ready. We don't have the compensation. Whatever. Okay, so Josh Dobbs gets traded to the Vikings. Big trade. So we've talked about now a couple times on the show already. What should we be doing with Justin Jefferson? How should we be projecting Justin Jefferson the rest of the year, given the quarterbacks, given this, given that, yada, yada, yada. Now, I think Josh Dobbs has shown he's capable of completing the passes, making the passes, right? Marquise Brown has been viewed as a relevant receiver this year. We've seen him target the tight ends plenty, with Zach Ertz having big games, Trey McBride just having a big game. So in terms of the receivers for the Vikings, I don't think they end up seeing that big of a step down from Kirk Cousins fantasy-wise. I think that makes a lot of I think it's a good thing for them, right? So talking about Justin Jefferson, I think when he comes back, he's still a wide receiver 1. I think Jordan Addison will continue to have some pretty big role. We've seen how Marquise Brown was targeted down the field. I think Jordan Addison could be targeted in the same way. And we've seen Josh Dobbs lock on to a tight end and pepper them with targets. So maybe the biggest winner in this entire thing may end up being TJ Hawkinson. Maybe he starts getting peppered with targets even more. Obviously, he's a big target. Obviously, he's a great player. He's an easy target for Josh Dobbs. So maybe he starts getting peppered with targets. That would be huge. See if he can really take over that tight end 2 behind Travis Kelce overall, I would say. I think TJ Hawkinson could be good. And then just Josh Dobbs as a whole. Josh Dobbs, if his passing is okay, we've seen him run and make some plays with his legs. He's getting some touchdowns. He extends some drives. So maybe he is locked in now as sort of a bye week fill-in candidate for you for fantasy football. And I think he has that top 15 upside every week. I think he could end up being relevant. So if you're in a deeper league, 14, 16 team, hell, maybe even 12 team, depending on how shitty your quarterback is, given the injuries, maybe you had Kirk Cousins. I would prefer to pick up Josh Dobbs right now over Will Levis. I would prefer to pick him up over, obviously you're not picking up the other Vikings quarterback. The 3 I'm balancing is we got Sam Howell, you got Derek Carr, you got Josh Dobbs. How would I order those 3? Again, I don't like Sam Howell this week against the Patriots. However, I think I still may go with Sam Howell as the best quarterback of the bunch. But I think I would probably go Sam Howell, Josh Dobbs, then Derek Carr, just because I've seen Derek Carr regress. I've seen Derek Carr fold as the season progresses. So while Derek Carr's been pretty steady the past month, I think I'd prefer Josh Dobbs over him. Luke, what's up, bud? Is it worth spending fab in a guillotine league on Justin Fields when I have CJ Stroud, just lost Kirk, have 88 fab to spend? It sounds like the Bears are going fucking all in after trading for Montez Sweat. That seems interesting. Here's my thought. Here's my thought process. I think, yes, you need to pay for a quarterback. I think, yes, you probably need another quarterback option than Stroud. I'm not hitting the panic button on Stroud after last week. I think he's going to be fine, but I think you need a better option, or you need another option at least to play the matchups or whatever. Justin Fields. It depends on how much you have to spend for Justin Fields. I think Justin Fields can return to very fantasy relevant value, fantasy starter value. But if you have to pay a shit ton in this guillotine league, I don't think that's worth it. I would much rather spend $2 on Josh Dobbs than $20 on Justin Fields, given your league type, given the guillotine league, where other players are going to get cut, obviously, and you're just trying to survive. So I would prefer that, if that makes sense. I think Fields can return to decent value, but I think Josh Dobbs is going to be okay. Goff, Mayfield, Levis, Dobbs are available. I don't want Levis. I don't really want Baker right now. And then Goff is on bye. So if you need somebody for this week instead of Stroud, Vikings have a fucking easy schedule, man. Let me just look at their schedule really quick just so I can tell you exactly. I think they play the Falcons this week. if I'm correct. Yes. So Falcons, Saints, Broncos, Bears, bye, Raiders. That's through week 14. And only one more week potentially without Justin Jefferson. Potentially. So I would go Josh Dobbs over Mayfield and Levis. Who does Stroud play this week? Stroud plays Tampa. That's not the easiest. Yeah, I kind of think I would go with Josh Dobbs. If I mean, you got a better read on your league than I do. So if you think you have to spend a lot for Justin Fields, I'm not doing it. I'm not spending a quarter of your remaining fab on him. Also, Bryce Young, Daniel Jones, Zach Wilson, Gardner Minshew, Mac, Jimmy, and Heineke. So just because there's so many people available and all you got to do is survive and more people are going to be available for you, I'm not spending more than more than $12 on Fields, I don't think. But for this week, I think Dobbs is decent. I think there's a chance Gardner Minshew could be decent this week. Who does Minshew play? Carolina, who obviously Stroud just struggled against. But I think Minshew could be pretty good against Carolina, actually. That might be the guy to target. Mac Jones plays Washington, which suddenly is looking even better. Bit of 12 for Fields and 2 for Dobbs. Yeah, I think that's cool. Are you allowed to trade in that league? Just a random question. But what else? Is there anything else? I want to know the compensation the Vikings gave up for Dobbs. It's got to be a 6th, right? 6th or 7th? No one's really saying it that I'm seeing. Hopefully we get more shit. Yes, you can trade. Just put some feelers out there for Stroud. That's what I would do too. Can you trade Fab? That would be huge if you can get, very difficult. If you can get someone to trade like $5 for Stroud and you spend 2 of it for Dobbs, that's not bad. That's not a terrible move. Also sounds like, Luke, that we're going to be able to trade Justin Jefferson now because of Josh Dobbs getting traded to the Vikings. So we deal Jefferson, we get CeeDee Lamb and Brock Purdy back. We're good to go. We are good to go unless Dobbs is available. That's something I should look up really quick. Excuse me, everybody. Live looking up of my own fantasy league while we're here because I need to see if Josh Dobbs is available. Because if he is, then I'm not trading for Brock Purdy. Maybe that tells you what I think about both Purdy and Josh Dobbs. Hey, Luke, after saying Josh Dobbs is the worst starting quarterback in the NFL, how does it feel that he's the second best starting quarterback in the NFC North now? Which is insane. Please tell me Josh Dobbs is available. This will be incredible for everybody, viewers included. Fuck, he's not. Here on the Dobbs news. Okay, cool. Yeah, we were just talking about this, Derek. Who would you be willing to give up for Justin Jefferson now, assuming you're locked into the playoffs? So for Justin Jefferson, again, I don't think I'm trading anything past like low end wide receiver 1 value for Justin Jefferson. I think he's going to be good. I don't think he's going to be Justin Jefferson of old for a couple of reasons. One, hamstring injury. We'll see how good of shape he is when he comes back. See how good the hamstring is when he comes back. Re-injury risk for soft tissue, lower leg, or just leg in general is certainly a thing. And then Josh Dobbs obviously is a downgrade from Kirk Cousins. So I'm not trading anything past low end wide receiver 1 value. it's hard for me to just tell you who would I be willing to give up for him, not knowing your team. So if you tell me what your team is, I'll let you know. But like, I would trade one of your starting receivers and maybe a running back or maybe a quarterback or something to see what you can do. It's going to be hard for you to go position for position. Like, I don't think you can go Kelvin Ridley for Justin Jefferson or something like that. That doesn't make sense. You have Hollywood, McLaurin, Olave that I'd consider. Let me know for your other players, but they're all worthy of getting rid of, I would say, for Justin Jefferson. Like, I'm cool with going Hollywood and somebody else, McLaurin and somebody else, Olave and somebody else for Justin Jefferson, depending on what that owner wants. I don't think you can do any of them individually for him. I think you're going to have to package. Luke thinks get rid of Olave. I can't necessarily disagree with that. Olave, like, you can look at the numbers, you can look at everything, and it screams there's potential for better days ahead. And I understand that's why all these other fantasy football analysts are saying he's such a buy low. You have to get him. I just think the offense and possibly his talent doesn't necessarily mean he's a buy low. You got Eckler, Kamara, and Mostert. I mean, you got anybody else? I don't want to trade those guys either. I would be willing for Justin Jefferson, and I would probably offer something lower, but I wouldn't be afraid of going Olave and Mostert for Justin Jefferson at all. I would be willing to do it. I don't know if the Jefferson owner will be willing to do it. You know what I mean? I would be willing to give that up. Justin Jefferson, possibly one more week out, possibly two, possibly three. But that schedule is looking nice, and Josh Dobbs is okay. That's about all I can say about him, but he is okay. I don't know if there's any other fantasy football waiver stuff to talk about, though. We've kind of been over it. If anyone else has questions in the chat, a few more people just popping in here, obviously. And if the NFL could make more trades that we could talk about, that would be cool. So far, it's what? We got Josh Dobbs. We got Montez Sweat. Is that it for today? Obviously, there's been a couple of other trades just in general, but nothing crazy. We are 2 hours away from the deadline, I believe. That's insane. I'm just looking at the video again right now of Montez Sweat getting traded for a second-round pick. What a fucking terrible trade by Chicago. No better look in the NFL than Hopkins in those Oiler jerseys. So good. So good. Those Oiler jerseys are some of the best of all time. They're so nice. I need to get some. I need to get some old Oiler gear, I think. They're so nice. It also looks a little bit better when he's scoring touchdowns, too, because I'm not sure if DeAndre Hopkins is aware of this, but he needs to get at least 851 yards this year for my bet. So what's he at? He can't be on track for that, right? Let's see. I'm not hanging out until the actual trade deadline, I should say, but he's at 500 yards. Holy shit. So we're good. Maybe. I mean, last 5 games, he's gotten 400 of those 500. But as long as DeAndre Hopkins plays the rest of the year, we should be good. I mean, that's 7 games. 500 yards, 7 games. All he has to do is get 851. We're good to go. Hitting up Justin Jefferson owner now. Want to get in front of this before he gets more offers. Yeah, for sure. For sure. For sure. I'm almost wondering if Justin Jefferson tweeted anything. Let's see. Maybe not. No. But yeah, I think he's a low end wide receiver one the rest of the way. It's got to be. Got to be. I think there's a chance we end the stream here. However, if there's actual trade deadline news that is relevant whatsoever, I think the plan is I'm just going to hop back on here and talk about it with you guys. So what I highly recommend and what I would love for you guys to do is, if you're on YouTube, which it seems like a few of you guys are, hit the notification bell as well as subscribe. So subscribe, cool. There's a decent chance you'll be notified that we're going live. But if you hit that bell, you will be notified if we go live for fantasy football streams, for possibly NBA in-season tournament coverage. Who knows what a fucking insane tournament, insane November that's about to be. But also, if I jump back live here for any NFL trade deadline talk, coverage, reactions, etc. So subscribe, hit that notification bell. But if you also want to ask more fantasy football questions, get more fantasy football advice, or also read, good fantasy articles, answer other people's questions, go to the Fantasy Football by Committee Facebook group. If you're watching on YouTube, it is linked below. You can ask questions yourself, other people you've seen on the show, including Luke, who's in chat right now. You can ask questions to other people in the community, or you can even answer questions from other people as well. If you want to be a fantasy analyst, if you're an aspiring fantasy analyst, that's a good way to get your name out there. You can share your articles. You can read some of our articles. These streams are shared in there. My rankings are shared in there. It's a great place, really, to help you get all of your fantasy analysis, to get your fantasy help for the season to help you win. And on top of that, if you were afraid that your friends are going to see you ask questions in there, you can ask questions anonymously, which is huge. Such a good group feature. Fantasy Football by Committee. Go to that Facebook group, subscribe to this channel, and we will be back for sure tomorrow night. Possibly I'll be back before or around the trade deadline. If there's other news that pops off, let's refresh one more time just in case something happened. No. But we'll be back. I'll be back soon. I'll see you soon.